Welcome to Life Stories, where real-life heroes come in all shapes and sizes. Today's story is one of unexpected bravery, unwavering love, and the sharp instincts of an unlikely guardian, a parrot named Charlie. When a seemingly perfect nanny is hired to care for baby Caleb, everything appears normal. But behind closed doors, a sinister plan unfolds. As danger lurks closer, Charlie becomes the only witness to a terrifying truth. Can a bird's warning save a child before it's too late? Subscribe to Life Stories to begin today's journey, a tale of courage, deception, and the power of listening to those who see what we cannot. Charlie was never just an ordinary parrot. He had lived in our family long before our son Caleb was born, and from the moment he arrived, he had been a sharp observer of everything around him. He had been my companion through late-night study sessions, a quiet presence during moments of sadness, and an unexpected source of joy during the happiest times. He was more than a pet, he was family. Rachel and I had adopted Charlie years ago, back when we were still newlyweds. At the time, we hadn't realized just how perceptive he was. His previous owner, an elderly linguistics professor, had trained him not just to mimic words but to understand context. Charlie could recognize emotions, changes in tone, and even subtle shifts in behavior. But even with all his intelligence, we never imagined that one day, he would be the one to save our son. Rachel and I both worked in the medical field. She was a pediatrician, and I was a surgeon, which meant long hours, unpredictable shifts, and sometimes entire nights away from home. When Caleb was born, we knew we needed help. That's when Jessica came into our lives. On paper, Jessica was perfect. She had glowing recommendations, years of experience, and a calm, warm demeanor that made her seem trustworthy. During the interviews, she spoke with such confidence about early childhood development, about the importance of patience and affection in raising a child. She smiled easily, and Caleb, just a few months old at the time, seemed content in her arms. For the first few weeks, everything seemed fine. She sent us detailed updates during the day, took pictures of Caleb playing, and reassured us that he was thriving. When we came home in the evenings, she would be there, rocking him gently in her arms, humming lullabies with the tenderness of a devoted caregiver. We felt lucky to have found her. But Charlie saw what we did not. At first, I didn't notice the change in him. He had always been a lively bird, full of energy, often chattering away about random things he had picked up from us. But after Jessica started working for us, his behavior shifted. He became restless. His feathers ruffled more often, and he perched uneasily, watching, always watching. Sometimes, when we arrived home, he would mutter things like, "Baby crying, bad lady." It struck me as odd, but I dismissed it. Parrots repeated things all the time. But Caleb had changed too. Before, he was a cheerful baby, cooing and giggling at the smallest things. But now, he was becoming more withdrawn, his bright eyes wary when Jessica was near. He would flinch when she touched him, and sometimes, when she entered the room, his tiny hands would clench into fists. He had begun waking up at night, screaming, and when we held him, he clung to us as though afraid we might disappear. I remember one evening when Rachel and I had just come home from work. Jessica was holding Caleb, bouncing him slightly in her arms, but his face was stiff, his little body tense. As soon as Rachel reached for him, he buried his face in her shoulder and started crying. "Oh, he's just a bit fussy today," Jessica said with an easy smile. "He's been teething." Rachel nodded, but I saw the worry in her eyes. Something didn't feel right. Charlie, perched in his usual spot near the living room, flapped his wings. "Help! Baby crying. Help!" he squawked loudly. Jessica laughed. "Oh, Charlie's quite the talker, isn't he?" Rachel and I laughed, too, shaking off the uneasy feeling in our stomachs. That night, as Rachel rocked Caleb to sleep, I sat in the living room, watching Charlie. He was unusually quiet, his head tilting slightly as though he were deep in thought. Then, softly, he said, "No good. No good. Baby hurt." I froze. I turned to look at him, my heart suddenly pounding. "What did you say, Charlie?" But he only ruffled his feathers and looked away. The next few days, I started paying more attention. Jessica was always careful, never doing anything outright suspicious in our presence. But when she thought we weren't looking, her movements became sharper, rougher. I noticed how she grabbed Caleb's little arms too tightly when lifting him, how she ignored his cries for long stretches of time. And then, there were the phone calls. Late at night, after we had put Caleb to bed, I sometimes heard Jessica murmuring on the phone in the kitchen, pacing near Charlie's cage. "The plan is almost ready," she whispered. "Once I get access to their accounts, yes. I know what to do with the baby. No one will suspect anything." My blood ran cold. I didn't know what she meant, but I knew it was bad. Charlie, perched silently in the shadows, had heard it too. He shifted uneasily, his bright eyes fixed on her. 4 days. I wrestled with my own thoughts. Was I overreacting? Was I letting paranoia get the best of me? I wanted to believe that I was wrong, that Jessica was just an ordinary nanny, that Caleb's fussiness was simply a phase. But the more I watched, the more I listened, the more I realized that Charlie wasn't just repeating words. He was warning us. And if we didn't listen soon, it might be too late. The weight of suspicion pressed down on me like a boulder. But still, I hesitated. I needed to believe that I was wrong, that I was imagining things. Jessica had been nothing but professional on the surface, never giving us a concrete reason to question her. But beneath that polished exterior, something sinister lurked. Caleb's cries had changed. They were no longer the soft, plaintive wails of a hungry or tired baby. Now, they were sharper, more urgent, filled with a fear I couldn't ignore. He flinched when Jessica approached him, his tiny fingers grasping desperately for Rachel or me whenever we came near. And then, there was Charlie. He had always been an observant bird, but now he seemed frantic, his usual chatter replaced by insistent warnings. "Bad lady. Baby crying. Help," he would squawk, ruffling his feathers anxiously. It was as if he knew something I didn't. Then, one evening, I saw it with my own eyes. Rachel was in the nursery, rocking Caleb before bed. I had just finished washing up when I heard a soft clinking sound from the kitchen. I walked in quietly, my bare feet making no sound on the tiled floor. Jessica stood at the counter, her back to me. She was preparing Caleb's bottle, just as she had done dozens of times before. But something was different. Her movements were careful, too careful. I watched as she took out a small, dark bottle from her pocket and, with a measured hand, let a few drops fall into the formula. My breath caught in my throat. She screwed the cap back on quickly, glancing around as if to make sure no one had seen. Charlie, perched in his usual spot near his cage, let out a low, warning squawk. I stepped into the room, trying to keep my voice steady. "What are you doing?" Jessica jumped, but only for a second. Then, she turned smoothly, her face a picture of practiced innocence. "Oh, I didn't see you there." She held up the baby bottle with a smile. "Just fixing Caleb's milk." I stared at the bottle, my mind racing. Had I really just seen what I thought I had? "What's in that?" I asked, forcing my voice to remain calm. She blinked, then laughed lightly. "It's just a little herbal remedy," she said. "Something to help Caleb sleep better. I read about it in a childcare journal. It's completely safe." Something about the way she said it made my stomach twist. I forced a nod and took a step closer. "Can I see the bottle?" Jessica hesitated for only a fraction of a second. But that was enough. Before I could say another word, Charlie let out a loud, piercing screech. No. Bad. Poison. He flapped his wings wildly, knocking over a nearby glass. Jessica's mask slipped. For just a moment, I saw something cold flicker in her eyes. Then, in one swift motion, she dropped the bottle. It hit the floor and shattered, its contents spreading in a sinister puddle across the tile. Rachel appeared in the doorway, alarmed by the noise. "What's going on?" she asked, cradling Caleb in her arms. I turned to her, my heart pounding. Jessica just put something in his milk. Rachel's eyes flicked to the broken glass, to the spilled liquid pooling on the floor, then back to Jessica. What was it? Her voice was sharp now, demanding. Jessica's lips parted, but no words came out. And then, before anyone could react, the front door opened. It was Emily, Rachel's sister, arriving unannounced with her young daughter, Sophia. They had been stopping by for a casual visit, but their timing couldn't have been more perfect. Emily's eyes swept over the scene, immediately sensing the tension. "Everything okay?" she asked slowly. Jessica forced a smile, stepping away from the mess on the floor. "Oh, just a little accident. I dropped Caleb's bottle." Sophia, curious as ever, wandered over to Charlie's cage. She had always been fascinated by him, whispering secrets to him whenever she visited. She slipped him a small piece of muffin, and Charlie tilted his head, watching her intently. Then, as if realizing this was his chance, he spoke again. "Help Caleb. Bad lady. Hurt baby." Silence fell over the room. Jessica stiffened. Sophia's eyes widened as she turned to her mother. "Mom, what does Charlie mean?" Emily's gaze snapped to me and Rachel, searching our faces for an explanation. And for the first time since we had hired Jessica, I allowed myself to say the words out loud. "I think she's been hurting Caleb." Jessica's expression flickered, shock, then anger, then something else. Something calculating. She knew she had been caught, but what she didn't know was that this was only the beginning. Jessica's mask cracked, but only for a second. She was good at hiding her emotions, that much was clear. But there, in the quiet tension of the kitchen, with a shattered bottle at her feet and Charlie's piercing warnings still hanging in the air, she knew she was losing control of the situation. Rachel tightened her grip on Caleb. I saw the shift in her posture, the sudden realization that the fear she had ignored, the unease she had pushed aside, had been real all along. Emily, standing protectively beside Sophia, narrowed her eyes at Jessica. What exactly was in that bottle? Her voice was steady, but there was a sharp edge to it. Jessica's mouth opened, but no words came out. Then, just as quickly, she seemed to regain her composure. "It was a sleep aid," she said smoothly. "An herbal supplement. Completely safe. I read about it in a medical journal." She turned to Rachel and me, her tone shifting to something almost accusatory. "You both work such long hours, I was just trying to help Caleb get a little more rest." Rachel was a pediatrician. She knew the signs of deception, of someone trying to manipulate a situation in their favor. And she wasn't having any of it. "You put something in my son's bottle without my consent." Her voice was shaking, not with fear, but with fury. Jessica's expression faltered. She never got the chance to finish. Sophia, still standing near Charlie's cage, suddenly pointed at the floor. "Mom, look." A small notebook lay just beneath the kitchen table. It must have slipped from Jessica's pocket when she had moved suddenly. Jessica's entire body tensed. Emily stepped forward before Jessica could react, snatching up the notebook and flipping through its pages. Her face paled. "Rachel," she whispered, handing it over. "You need to see this." Rachel hesitated only a moment before taking the book. Her fingers trembled as she scanned the pages. It was filled with numbers, schedules, and notes written in Jessica's precise handwriting. It wasn't just about Caleb. It was about us. Our schedules. our habits, our finances. Even Caleb's medical history was written in careful detail. Rachel's voice was barely above a whisper. What is this? Jessica took a slow step back, her gaze flicking toward the front door. Stay where you are, I said, stepping between her and the exit. My voice was calm, but my entire body was buzzing with adrenaline. Jessica's mask was gone now. Her face was blank, her eyes calculating. You don't understand, she said, her voice flat. No, Rachel shot back, her grip on the notebook tightening. I think we do. Jessica's fingers curled into fists at her sides. I should have known that stupid bird would ruin everything, she muttered. Charlie squawked loudly. Bad lady. Poison. No good. Sophia clutched her mother's hand. Mom. I don't like her. Emily's face was hard. Neither do I. Jessica exhaled sharply, as if resigning herself to the inevitable. But then, in a final act of defiance, she turned to Rachel and me with an expression so filled with contempt it sent a chill down my spine. You have no idea who you're dealing with, she said quietly. And then, just as quickly as the fear had settled over us, it was replaced by something worse. A knock at the door. A hard, urgent knock. Jessica's eyes flickered with something almost like relief. And that's when I knew we weren't just dealing with a dangerous nanny. We were dealing with something much, much bigger. The knock at the door sent a cold wave of dread through me. Rachel and Emily exchanged a tense glance. And even Sophia instinctively took a step closer to her mother. Jessica, however, straightened her posture, her confidence returning as if she had just been given a lifeline. For the first time since we had uncovered her deception, she smiled. Who's that? Jessica? I asked, my voice calm but firm. She tilted her head slightly, feigning innocence. Oh, just a friend. You know, people tend to look out for each other in my line of work. I moved toward the door, glancing out the peephole. A man stood on the porch, dressed in casual clothes but with an air of practiced confidence. He wasn't holding a package, nor did he look confused or lost. He knew exactly why he was here. Jessica took a slow step toward me, lowering her voice so only I could hear. I suggest you let him in. You wouldn't want things to get messy. My jaw clenched. Rachel, I said over my shoulder, my voice controlled but urgent. Take Caleb upstairs. Emily, go with them. Rachel hesitated for only a second before scooping Caleb into her arms. His tiny fingers curled into her sweater as she turned, her pace quickening. Emily grabbed Sophia's hand and followed without a word, disappearing up the stairs. Jessica sighed dramatically. That's not very hospitable. I ignored her and turned my attention back to the door. The knocking came again, this time louder. Whoever was outside was growing impatient. Charlie, still in his cage, began flapping his wings wildly. No. Bad. No good. His voice was sharp. Urgent. I made a split-second decision. Instead of opening the door, I reached over and bolted it shut. Jessica's expression darkened. The man outside knocked again, 3 loud, deliberate bangs. And then, after a beat of silence, his voice cut through the door. Jessica, open up. She didn't move. Instead, she stared at me, waiting, testing me. You should open the door, she said, her voice too smooth, too controlled. Or he'll find another way in. That was all I needed to hear. I turned away from the door and reached for my phone. Before I could dial, Jessica lunged. She was fast, faster than I expected, but I had been prepared for it. I caught her wrist just as she reached for my phone, twisting her arm just enough to force her back. She stumbled. And for the first time, a flicker of real panic crossed her face. Charlie screeched again. Bad lady. Help. Help. Jessica turned on him, her face twisted in frustration. Shut up. You useless bird. I saw the shift in her stance, the way her muscles tensed. She was going to try to run. Before she could. I grabbed her other arm, pinning her in place. "You're not going anywhere." A sudden, violent crash came from outside. The man had given up knocking. He was trying to break in. Jessica's lips curled into a smirk. "Told you." For the first time, I felt real fear, not for myself, but for Rachel, for Caleb, for everyone upstairs. But then, another voice cut through the chaos. "Police, step away from the door." Everything froze. Jessica's smirk vanished. A second later, another crash, but this time, it was the front door being forced open. Not by the man outside, but by officers storming in. The man on the porch barely had time to react before he was tackled to the ground, his arms pinned behind his back. Jessica let out a sharp breath, her bravado fading as two officers stepped toward her. "Jessica Caldwell," one of them said, pulling out a pair of handcuffs. She didn't answer. Instead, she turned to me with an eerie calmness. "This isn't over," she said softly. And then, without another word, she was led away. Upstairs, Caleb started crying. Rachel appeared at the top of the staircase, relief flooding her face as she took in the scene below. Emily was right behind her, still gripping Sophia's hand. Charlie, watching everything from his perch, ruffled his feathers and let out one final, satisfied sound. No more bad lady. In the days that followed, the truth about Jessica and the organization she worked for unraveled. The police uncovered a network of individuals who had been targeting families just like ours, wealthy, busy professionals with young children. Thanks to Charlie's warnings, Rachel's instincts, and Emily's quick thinking, we had stopped them before it was too late. Caleb recovered quickly, safe in the love and protection of his family. Rachel and I adjusted our schedules, ensuring we would never again place blind trust in a stranger. Sophia became a little hero, her diary helping the authorities track down more criminals. And Charlie, he remained our vigilant protector, never letting his watchful eyes stray too far from Caleb. Sometimes, heroes don't wear capes. Sometimes, they have feathers. Subscribe to Life Stories for more captivating tales of courage, love, and the unexpected heroes among us.